Hello and welcome to Sound Roots Connect. I'm Tom Besford, one of the team here, and today we're talking to Ben Price from PRS Foundation about the Early Career Promoter Fund. Ben, will you just tell us a bit about it?
Yeah, so I'm happy to give you a short presentation about the Early Career Promoter Fund, and then we could have a chat about it. For those that don't know anything about it, I will just share my screen. Just bear with me 1 second. So
Yeah.
yeah, we're talking about the Early Career Promoters Fund, which is facilitated by PRS Foundation, but is funded by Arts Council England and the DCMS. So I'm the Grants and Programs Manager here, as Tom said, and here's a little bit about it for those who don't know. So the fund is there to support promoters, obviously, and we offer up to £3,500 in grant support, which can include costs towards the booking and programming and promotion of shows, costs associated with those activities, also capacity building efforts. So that could be mentoring, masterclasses, other skills and network building opportunities that may seem relevant to that particular promoter. And any other expenditure which helps grantees program a diverse range of artists, develop new audiences and build their skills. So the fund is there not as a fund to just support a young promoter as a general grant, but to put on specific shows that hopefully help to upskill them and develop them and test their capacity limits. If you are welcomed on as a grantee, not only do you get the money to put on the shows, but we will be offering some wraparound support. And that is going to look like a series of masterclasses put on by us, facilitated, getting some good people along to talk about their experiences in promoting in specific areas. It may also include us providing toolkits, how-to guides in certain areas. And also, as it says here, pooling of existing industry resources. There are a few resources dotted around from different trade bodies, but our idea is to sort of try and collate these things in one place so that people do have a more comprehensive, how-to guide of how to put on shows and build your career as a promoter. And each grantee comes on, is onboarded as well, so we connect everybody together. The idea is that it's a network of early career promoters, so they have the opportunity not only to learn from us, but to learn from each other. And that will be facilitated within chat groups and other activities. And as it says there, masterclasses are going to be held quarterly for all grantees to attend. At the moment, at time of recording, we've had 2 sets of grantees announced, and we are just about to have our 3rd panel to decide our 3rd set of grantees, and there are nine rounds in total. So what's it for? What are the funding priorities? What do ACE and DCMS want to make sure that we are supporting? Well, we want us to help emerging promoters to do what they do best, to book and develop scenes, support artists and DJs, and reach out and engage audiences locally, regionally, and nationally. To help promoters build towards sustainable careers in the grassroots music sector. So it's not just about those shows, it's very much about the capacity building exercises that they build into their budgets and their applications. We can come on to that a bit more, but it is a really important part of the application and not to be overlooked. Anything that helps to bolster the local, regional and national pipeline. So activities that clearly support the ecosystem of the music industry, the grassroots music scene especially, are very much what we're looking for. So if we see applications that quite clearly benefits both the promoter and then also a venue, and also a series of artists and the crew that would go into making that event happen, then we can really see the impact of those events and it would have a stronger chance of success. We want to help promoters deliver events and work at a scale beyond their current experience levels. So ideally, this fund is not for people who maybe they run a monthly night and they just want the funding to kind of mitigate their risk for running the same night for 3 extra months. What we want to see people do is to test their boundaries and to scale upwards, knowing that they've got money to help support them break even, and they can, essentially take bigger risks as promoters to do bigger things and expand on their experience levels. And importantly, we want to address underrepresentation within the live sector. It has obviously historically been quite male driven, but we have found with this fund very encouraging signs from the first two rounds that around 65% of grantees so far and applications as well on the whole are either from women or gender diverse communities. So we're already seeing really positive results there to help address that underrepresentation. So who can apply? Well, we've deliberately tried to make it as open-ended as possible. There's not many people who can't apply for this. But as a general guide, we say that eligible applicants, they obviously have to be based in England. That is because the funding is from Arts Council England, therefore it doesn't expand to other regions of the United Kingdom. This is the only PRS Foundation fund that does not extend to the wider communities of the United Kingdom. So we allow promoters to self-identify as early career, and that is basically because, well, there's no definition. There's no official definition of what makes you an early career promoter, but we give guidance on what we expect to be where our panelists will see that people are most in need of support. So we're highly unlikely to support those who are completely new to booking, i.e. have done no show, be one show, two shows. We expect that applicants will have promoted at least 2 events upwards. Just as a guide so far, after 2 rounds, the average amount of shows that a grantee has promoted in the past is coming up around 15, which we think is quite a healthy number. Likewise, we're unlikely to support those who are deemed as established promoters regionally or nationally, who should instead be applying for Arts Council and supporting Grassroots Music Fund. That is obviously a bigger pot of money. You can apply for up to £40,000 from Arts Council England if you are deemed as an established promoter or a business running, working in promotion. This is very much more likely to be for those who work part-time as promoters and are supplementing their income elsewhere. Funding can be for anyone over 18 years of age. There's no upper age limit. So when we talk about early career, we're not talking about young promoters as such. We're just talking about early career promoters. Most eligible applicants will be considered as out-of-house promoters rather than in-house promoters or bookers. And we'll consider applications from artists promoting events which develop their own promoter brands and a development of scenes, but not their development as an artist. So we have already funded some artists who in some scenes, probably more in different scenes like jazz, for example, who are working as an artist, but also helping to develop a promoter brand to help other artists in that sector. Especially if they're underrepresented genres as such. We certainly seem to be seeing that as a trend. So, you know, as we're talking directly to the folk industry today, you know, there's no reason that couldn't be the case for any folk artists who are developing their own promoter brand and are putting on their own nights, so long as those events were clearly promoting a brand as a promoter and not necessarily promoting your own headline shows. As I say, there's not many people who can't apply because the way we phrase it is that, you know, we try and make it sure everybody is eligible, or as many people as possible are eligible, and then the panelists will try and pick who they feel is most in need of their fund to develop themselves. As I said, we can't fund anyone who's outside England. We can't fund anything that is capital purchases, including AV equipment. Building work is specifically for shows and not to develop venues. Projects requesting funding that will or will not be covered without the need for funding. I think this is a really good one to touch on, you know, because we've gotten the experiences now of running a couple of rounds of this. This is happening very commonly. We are seeing people apply for events that are already on sale. And that clearly they are asking for the funding to purely mitigate their own risk and loss. They're not putting it on, you know, because they see the fund as a way of testing their boundaries and working upwards. So we'd like to see that it's an idea, that it's something that you want to do, that will upscale you, that will help you to promote at a higher level. And that ideally is not already on sale. If your event is already on sale and you're applying to us, then it should be funding will bring add-ons to that event, and it's very clear and communicated what those add-ons were, i.e. the production will be much higher. I'm going to bring in additional projectors and screens and lots of other things that you might do to upscale your event if your event is already on sale. So ideally, we ask people to plan events that the funding will actually support, and that without the funding, if the funding doesn't come through, the events won't take place. Another really important one, the activity takes place before the funding decisions are communicated. So you'll see on our website, we have deadlines monthly, but after that deadline comes in, there is an 8-week wait before a decision. And we're finding many people's activities are taking place either during that 8-week period or in the immediate aftermath of that 8-week period. And to us, that says if we're telling you after 8 weeks that you've got a yes and you've only got 2 weeks to then market a show, then it obviously raises question marks over how achievable that is. So in an ideal world, from the funding deadline, your events wouldn't take place at least 12 weeks after, ideally much further into the future, to allow you to plan and market your events successfully. We can't fund attendance at conferences and events taking place outside of the UK for the same reasons I've mentioned, as the fund is provided by Arts Council England. Likewise, promotion of events outside England is not allowed. And we can't fund anyone who has concurrent funding from the Arts Council supporting Grassroots Music Fund. As I say, that is the larger pot of money, but it derives from the same place. And this is specifically to help early career promoters. If you've already qualified for the Arts Council supporting Grassroots Music Fund, then you don't need the Early Career Promoter Fund. So in those instances, we wouldn't be able to fund, but everybody else is eligible, but the panelists will decide who is most in need of the funding compared to all the other applications in that pool at the time. So the top tips, and I'm sure you'll ask me some of these, Tom, but always read the eligibility. Make sure that you're happy and that you fit in with the criteria, and that really your application speaks to the funding needs that I went through earlier, specifically to improve both your own skills and to benefit the grassroots ecosystem. They're really important. So as I say, the relevance of your activity, think deeply about those things. Make it as clear as possible what you're doing and when you want to do it. And think about your budget accordingly. There is a budget form on there which has many lines, all the kind of lines you would see on a promoter settlement. But we acknowledge that this is early career, and we're not expecting everybody to have very detailed costs for insurance, for PRS, for music costs, for everything else. We acknowledge that this is early career, and that the wraparound support will include more on how to budget for shows and things like that. So we're not looking for a perfect budget, but just make sure that you're costing accordingly and that you've clearly researched your costs, such as especially your venue hire, your production costs, and everything like that, and just make it clear and try and break down in the item boxes you'll see on the budget exactly how you've broken down that sum and come to that amount of money. In terms of the skills building, I said it was a really important part of the application. It's scored as equally as the activities themselves by the assessors. So they are looking for the strength of your activities, but equally they're looking at how much you acknowledge where your skills gaps are and where you feel that you need to improve. It's not a quiz question that you feel you should feel nervous about. We're not trying to fund perfect people here. We're trying to fund people who understand where their development needs are. So you could include things like mentoring and coaching, shadowing and partnering with other events and festivals, attending workshops, masterclasses and conferences in the UK that seem relevant to your genre, training including DE&I and support relating to sustainability. It could be legal advice, accounting services, bespoke support identified as important to the applicant. And that's important. Every single person is different. Everyone has different development needs, so they don't have to be in this list. It could be anything that feels relevant to you. The remaining rounds are here. I'm not quite sure as of date of recording. I imagine we won't see round 4, September the 17th, but you can see the remaining rounds thereafter. So assuming you're watching this after September the 17th, you can see the remaining rounds there from round 5 onwards. Hopefully this is extended, but at the moment this is a limited time period only. So the last date for applications is February the 11th, but you can plan your events to be up to 12 months ahead of the grant. So you could still apply even as early as next year for events that are happening later in 2025. I mean, that's it really, Tom. We'll just put our email address up if anyone does have any questions, generic questions about the fund, then info@prsfoundation.com. Or probably more directly, I think the best email address is applications@prsfoundation.com. That will come into our inboxes, and we'll be able to help with any general inquiries. But the guidance on the website is very clear, and hopefully is a really strong guide to everybody on what we're trying to apply for. And hopefully this video is helpful too, because we can dig into a bit more to some of the more technical things that I think will help people to put in stronger applications.
Thank you, Ben. That is really comprehensive. I had a job lot of questions, and so many of them you've ticked off, but I've still got a few on the list to work through, if that's okay. So this is ideally aimed at people who maybe haven't even thought about applying for funding before. How long does it take to complete the application form? How many questions are there? Is it a complicated process?
We try not to make it too complicated. There are 6 different sections to the form, but when you think that, a couple of those are more, about you and obviously you're monitoring at the end, you're asked to detail what you've achieved so far in terms of a promoter and what your ambitions would be. And then you have the chance to say what your activities are. And then there is a section on how you plan to develop your own skills, and then there's a budget. So I would say, it like all funding applications, it does take dedicated time to do. It's not something you can do in an hour or two. I'd suggest if you want to do it well, you need to look at it, read the eligibility, and plan some time accordingly. But we do try and make it more simple than bigger pots of money. Rightfully so. Obviously, the Arts Council's larger fund for supporting grassroots music is much more comprehensive, and you can apply for up to 40,000. We've tried to make this as simple as it can be, and it is fairly limited. But I would definitely say you need to plan it properly, and over not necessarily in one chunk, but you should probably think of it as 4 or 5 hours of work to do it correctly, I would say.
That's really clear, thanks. In terms of the professional development area, I think that's really fascinating and really helpful with this. But can you use it to attend other gigs, to go and do some market research and look at other gigs? And what about things like non-music training programs? When I first started out, one of the most helpful things was actually getting an alcohol license. If I was hiring a village hall, I could run bars myself. Can you use it to pay for things like that?
Yes, you can, as long as you can demonstrate that it is relevant and would be significant to your development. And there's no reason you can't do that if it's as long as it is in the interest of putting on live shows, then absolutely, as I said in that presentation, it should be tailored to you and what your needs are. In terms of attending other gigs, sure, if you can prove that or explain why that is particularly important to you. I have seen that come up once in an application so far. More likely we are seeing people who want to attend conferences. But if you want to put on a particular night and maybe there's something similar somewhere else that you'd like to learn from, then we wouldn't look at that and say that's ineligible. We'd understand if it was explained properly that that is an important part of your own market research.
I think the idea of attending conferences and industry events is absolutely essential. Ultimately, growing your professional network is how you'll grow your career as a promoter. You've said it's for early career, meaning you probably should have tried to put on some gigs before. How far into your career is too far to be early career? For example, you might have run a regular night in a small bar or something for years, but then deciding actually I'd really like to find a way to get into the arts centre down the road. I'd really like to maybe put on a couple of other dates outside of the venue. Is that too much? Is it about longevity of putting on gigs, or is it about the scale that you've worked at?
I think it's really about the career level that you're at, and you may have put on gigs once a month for 5 to 10 years, but you're still self-employed. You're doing this as well, you could be doing it as a hobbyist, or you could be doing it just purely as a part-time, and you have another part-time job, or you probably may even have a full-time job, and you've just been putting on this one night a month, for example. Unless you're working full-time as a promoter, or you were a company or a small company working in as a promoter, then there's no reason you wouldn't be eligible. What we've found so far as a trend is that we haven't yet funded anybody, and this is limited data because we're only on round 2. We've funded 35 people so far. We haven't funded anybody who has never promoted a show, as we expected, and we haven't put on anybody who's promoting shows for more than 10 years. That doesn't mean they're ineligible. There's not a 10-year cutoff, but we do monitor how long they have been promoting shows, and it's purely a trend rather than anything that we've decided should be the case. The idea is that all the applications are measured against each other and decided who is in most need of funding for that particular round. That's not to say somebody who's been promoting for 15 years, but in the instance that I've explained, they're putting on a show, but actually they're only part, they're not, it's not a career. And we do ask for your earnings from promotion from the last year. And, it raises the question, doesn't it? What is a livable wage from promoting? If you've even made £15,000 from promoting for the previous year, does that mean you're a full-time promoter? It probably doesn't. So, we'd accept applications. No one is really ineligible, but it might be that when the panelists get together to discuss the applications measured against each other, they feel somebody who is much more early stages would benefit a lot more if they are trying to scale up at a quicker rate. So there's no real right or wrong answer to this question. It's always on the case of deciding who is in most need of funding from the people that we do see, as long as they do fall into the eligibility criteria, which, as I've said, are quite open. So people who've been promoting for a long time but are now thinking about how do I scale this up to do bigger should absolutely apply, and they shouldn't feel that they're not early career, really, unless they are doing this as a kind of somewhere between a part-time and full-time career. We don't have any strict cutoffs at all.
And to manage expectations, do you think if you're promoting in entirely grassroots venues, so maybe up to 200 capacity, how realistic is it that anyone joining this fund could expect at the end, by the end of it, to be promoting full time?
Well, it's not really. It's obviously a small pot of money. It's not intended to be necessarily the conversion between part-time and full-time work, but it's designed to help somebody have the funding and the backing to be able to scale up and try, maybe if they have been promoting in 200 caps, to maybe try and book a 400 and test themselves out at that level and see if it is sustainable. Then the idea is that then once they've tested themselves with the financial security of doing a show that might otherwise be too much of a risk for them to put on, they might not want to go up to a 400 and risk losing £2,000 or £3,000, but with the backing of the fund, they know, well, okay, well, hopefully at worst, I'll only break even. Hopefully they can try and do that. And then if they find a successful model for upscaling and promoting at larger rates, then hopefully that just helps them to either continue to do that or to think of a way to upscale further to bigger capacities. We want to offer the wraparound support that helps support them into doing that, but we don't necessarily bill this as something that will help people become full-time promoters, but hopefully give them the backing and the structural support to enable them to build upwards themselves.
One of the challenges when building into larger venues is actually having the relationships with the booking agents who will trust you with their artists.
Yeah.
Do you provide any support or any backing or kind of, I guess, helping open those doors to build those trust, that trust between a booking agent and a new promoter?
Yeah, I think a key part of the wraparound support will be in agent relations. We've already established that that is a key area. We are inviting some agents to come on to the wraparound support to offer masterclasses, and I think that will help give guidance on how to build those relationships and how to nurture those relationships. I think we'll also talk to other established promoters about how they have fostered those relationships in the past. And yeah, it's certainly part of the intention is to look at how we can make those relationships smoother and how people should approach those relationships. It's a key area.
A couple more questions on this. What happens if you make an ambitious plan to build to promote in a larger venue and you think you're going to just about break even and you might need the support of the fund for that, and then it absolutely flies and you make loads of money? Do you have to give the cash back?
No, you don't have to give the cash back. I mean, we do say in our guidance that if you make a profit, you should let us know. It's an important part of the evaluation for us to see. What we would ask you to do is reinvest that money either in yourself. I mean, you can use it to, what we said, you can either use it to pay people more fairly and to reward the other stakeholders of the show, i.e. the artists, and also think about paying yourself more fairly. You can also tell us your plans to reinvest that back into the ecosystem with another event. I think that would naturally be our preference. I think it does say on our guidance that you can choose not to claim the final full amount of your grant, but we're not holding our breath on that one. I think realistically we're more in favour of seeing that those events, especially if they were successful, let's make sure you keep the momentum up and reinvest that either into yourself or into further events.
And conversely, if you're encouraged through this fund to take a bit of a risk, and there'll always be an element of risk in promoting, that's the nature of it, and it does far worse than you expected, and you lose more money than you get in the grant, is there any scope of coming back to PRSF and saying, "Oh, can you dig me out of this hole that I've got myself in"?
Yeah, I mean, the short answer is no, but we do that risk in a number of ways. So we obviously don't want somebody to try and do something that we think is overambitious. We do look at the activities, and sometimes applications have been rejected because we think that they are just too far above the scale that they've done before. We also ask people to really budget to break even based on, could be as low as 60-70% of sales. So we don't say give us a breakneck budget of selling all your tickets, and when you submit your budget in the application, your income and your expenditure have to break even. You have to show that you have a plan to break even, and that should be based on selling, let's say, 60-70% of your tickets. The idea is that hopefully you do much better than that and you make the profit, and we're talking about the conversation that you had before. But hopefully with it being both small scale venues and small scale grants, hopefully nobody would lose a lot of money. We don't think we're backing people who don't have the experience to sell that minimum amount of tickets. So yeah, we're looking at it from two ends. We're assessing that the applications aren't too ambitious, but we're also asking people to really, be very quite reserved in their estimates of ticket sales. So hopefully, if there is any loss, it would be rather minor rather than anything significant. And with the wraparound support and everything else that we offer, there would still have a lot of development and benefits from from having the grant. So yeah, hopefully we won't be talking about too big of losses. But yeah, it's a possibility, but we hope it doesn't happen.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Just some practical things to finish on here. Do you have to be an individual to apply? If you already have a company set up that you're running gigs through, can that company apply? What about companies that are limited by shares? Any restrictions on the entity that can make the application?
So it is to support individuals. Quite distinct. We're quite distinct in that it's to develop individuals. However, we understand that many people work in small collectives of 2 to 3 individuals, and they can apply, stating that they are part of a collective, but the application is in the individual's name, and therefore any capacity building, for example, they couldn't put 3 tickets to the Great Escape in there because they're in a collective. It is to support them as an individual.
But even, sorry to interrupt, Ben, but even if you were a sole director of a company, could that company be the one that makes the application rather than you individually?
No, it would need to be the individual.
Right. That's really clear.
Yeah.
What's the percentage success rate? So how many grantees have you made so far versus how many have applied?
I think, well, we've granted 35 so far. I think the success rate is around 25% in terms of, applicants to grantees. We expect now we are announcing grantees that we'll see more applications because we think people there's trends with our other funds that show that once we start talking about and giving examples of who people are who are getting funding, people see them and say, oh, that this looks like me. I give this a go. So we're expecting to see more applications from this round. So it's going to be competitive. We try and support as broad a mix of genres as we can. So we don't have set targets as such, but we're very, PRS Foundation is very proud to support music of all genres. So if you are a member of the folk community thinking of applying, you absolutely should. We are, I'd probably say this for every genre, but I'd like to see more from this part of the music industry. We're not seeing a great deal of folk applications thus far, so we want to support. So please, have a look at it.
I think that is really clear. That's the end of my questions, Ben. Thank you very much for your time today. Really appreciate that, and hopefully it's inspired some people to make some applications.
I hope so. And the email address was there before, applications@prsfoundation.com if anyone's got any questions, or the website is prsfoundation.com if they want to find the guidance on there. Hopefully it's really clear on how to tailor a really great application. Thanks, Tom.
Great. Thank you.